questions being raised about whether or not the group will be allowed to just simply wither. So we're in conversation with Atanu Mukherjee, who's President MN Dastur and Company, as well as Amit Dixit, who is a research analyst at Edelweiss Securities. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining in. And I do want to start by asking about the impact of this crisis that is looming, that we don't have all the answers to. What are the initial reactions, though? I will start with you, Atanu. On this Evergrande crisis, how do you see it panning out? There was a bit of a shock in the metal space. Do you see that continuing for a little while?
Yes. So I think if you look at the Evergrande crisis that's unfolded, I think the long term, the shock is going to be muted because the general contribution of the debt outstanding of Evergrande across the total portfolio of debt that is there is significant but not substantial. So on the longer term, I think it'll even out. But I think there's a larger story behind it in terms of the fact that the Chinese government specifically is trying to move away from property investments and speculation in property. And I think that's got to do with how do you make the economy more productive. And I think that's the first salvo in that direction. So that is why you see that the whole change in terms of some of the rules, in terms of the liquidity rules, in terms of the debt to equal asset rules that they've put together in place, has forced Evergrande to move in the direction that it has in terms of its liquidity crisis and its debt payment crisis. So I think there's a larger story behind it rather than just specifically in Evergrande in terms of being able to really move the Chinese economy from a property-based economy, which is about 20-25% of the GDP today, to more of a more productive economy where investments are more diverted towards things like manufacturing, things like other things which are related to more productive activities. So I think that is the net direction. And obviously there's a short-term fallout, which I think will even out. I think if there's any systemic contagion that may prop up, I think that the Chinese government will take care of that at the appropriate point of time. So I do not believe that there's going to be a Lehman kind of effect that a lot of people fear, with the Evergrande saga unfolding.
Understood. I'll come to you, Amit, on this next question, which has to do with the production curbs that have been introduced, I believe, about a month ago. And this is something of an ongoing process, I believe, in China, which is the largest producer of steel. What are the implications, considering that these companies in China are now operating at a significantly lower capacity? What are the implications on prices? How do we see that panning out?
The way we look at it is that, first of all, these production cuts, unlike what we have heard in the past, particularly winter curtailments, are more of a structural in nature because they fit in very well with the China's intention of decarbonization. So clearly, we have seen China taking steps in these directions. And if you look at more near term, then I believe that these production cuts will only intensify as the winter comes and as we go in the first quarter of next calendar year when China is hosting Winter Olympics and Winter Paralympics. So clearly, these production cuts are going to stay. And the impact that they will have on prices, what we have seen in the past that Chinese authorities coming to fore, expressing their discomfort on the level of prices. So as I said that currently the demand in China is quite feeble. If you look at any of the indicators, PMI or any of the more fundamental indicators such as new floor spaces sold, etc., they are all down and significantly down. I mean, at the lowest level, possibly, you would have found them in the past. So clearly the economic growth is quite slow, and this production cuts actually helps them to balance both supply and demand. and hence prices, in my view, they will remain quite stable in the near term, and that is what we are seeing playing out. I mean, any time back, if you had seen that if Chinese consumption, steel consumption going down by 9 to 10% in 2 successive months, that would have meant bloodbath for prices. But currently, what we see prices being more stable. So I would say that we are entering into a new kind of, structural change where prices won't go down to the level that people have been accustomed to. One of the very fancy terms among the analysts is mean reversion. Now that mean itself will rise because of production cuts being implemented in China. And as I said, these are structural in nature. It's not that, suddenly government will come and ease them off. So clearly, I see a very good roadmap for next 6 months at least for these production cuts.
Sure. Atanu wanted to understand, given that, Indian steel players did get high iron ore prices as well, integrated versus coking coal prices being lower, is that now sort of reversing, or things are pretty much status quo, you think?
Well, I think, if you look at the coking coal prices, they've gone up probably about 20% on the average. Of course, there have been highs of as high as $350, $360 per ton. The iron ore prices have reduced quite a bit. So on the whole, the price premium at this point of time, given the recovery of the latent demand that was there, is still in hold. So given the fact that the price is holding, and which we expect to continue to hold for quite some time, and given the interplay between the higher coking prices and obviously the lowering of the iron ore prices, more or less the profitability and the EBITDAs of these companies will be maintained, at the levels that we see in the Indian context. And so I think that will continue, to be pretty robust over the ensuing quarters. Although I would say as the demand kind of evens out over time, probably over the next year plus or so, as the later demand kind of like gets absorbed, we think that you will see more modest profitability premiums that you've been used to seeing in the past few quarters. And I think that'll revert towards a more normal mode of operation in the Indian steel industry.
Amit, if I could get you in as well here, in terms of steel capex, do you now see companies putting more capex given that steel demand is clearly higher than supply?
No, so currently, if you look at steel demand, even in India, unfortunately, I have never seen, in my 15 years of covering the sector, quite closely, I have never seen 5 consecutive months of weak demand. So clearly demand is expected to pick up. You can't take these 5 months as proxy going ahead. Now coming to capex part, that's a very interesting question, because all the companies that have announced capex, you look at anyone, they have all announced brownfield capex, and therefore the intensity is lower, number one. Number two, the capacity will also come on board quicker than you would expect in a greenfield capex. Greenfield capex, really, we have not seen many announcements, and companies are being rightly very prudent over there. Now, if you look at India, I see India turning more of exporter now. Consider this fact that before FY20, we used to export around 5 million tons of steel every year. And now we are doing upwards of 2 million tons for last 4 months. It has to do with demand weakness, definitely. But as the demand also picks up in the country, we have capacities also coming up. So we have not heard of any greenfield capex announcement. And even if it is done, well, the greenfield capacities typically take time to come. So in fact, I would see, people being more interested in inorganic acquisitions of assets such as NINL, RINL, even NMDC's plant might look interesting for some. And these are the plants where production is not happening at the optimal rate. So a company, any big major player can definitely ramp up production. So you will see extra bit of supply coming from there, not necessarily from greenfield projects as such.
Atanu, I want your view on a slightly larger perspective. So, if you talk about China, obviously, this is what my first question to you was. But clearly, the US is also going to be spending big on infrastructure. That's something a lot of metal companies globally are going to be betting on. And that really was the focus a couple months back. But the gap between India and China in terms of the sheer size and quantity of production is humongous. Where do you see things moving in terms of the pie going forward? How does the global scenario play out for metals, and is that super cycle intact then?
So that's an interesting question. So if you look at the dynamics of the markets in steel around the world, if you look at the United States at this point of time, as you know, the prices at this point of time in the US and the North American markets are unprecedented, right? This never happened before. At about $2,000 per ton of HRC, you've never seen that before, right? And I think that a lot of the dynamics that's playing out there essentially has got to do with how do I maximize the profit skimming, right? Because earlier, most of these steel plants had rushed to put in capacity either in brownfield or greenfield farms and had been burnt in terms of not being able to really monetize that capacity in the most effective way. So right now, if you look at the United States steelmakers, the North American steelmakers, most of these, all of them in fact, are essentially trying to maximize what they can get into the premium the capacity. If you look at the infrastructure plans, specifically in the United States, yes, the Biden administration is certainly what you call putting in a lot of investments in the new infrastructure space, for example, in the energy space, in the bridges, in the roads, and then that's going to pass in some form. It may not be $3.5 trillion. It'll be some watered down form, but that certainly will drive more infrastructure build out, and obviously more requirement for steel and related capacities. And I think that you'll see as over time, at least in North America, a lot of these capacities probably is going to be added, maybe a year and a half from now. That's when you see that starting to happen, when a little more clarity comes in terms of how the infrastructure spend is going to happen. If you look at India, on the other hand, there's certainly a lot of infrastructure investments that are happening at this point of time, but it's the same phenomenon. If you look at the capex investments, that's not happening at this point of time. And I think a lot of it's got to do with the memory of the cycle that we have gone through in the past 7, 8, 9 years. And I think people are a little gun shy in terms of investing right away. And people are very busy building up the balance sheets and kind of like maximizing the EBITDA. And at some point of time, as the demand really starts to signal the investment in supply, I would think that you will see, for example, ArcelorMittal probably coming in with large-scale greenfield investments. You will see some other investments coming in from probably Jindal's, we work with, for example. Obviously, there'll be some what we call consolidations and sellouts like Ara and others. But I think that's a little muted because right now, world over, if you look at North America, if you look at India, all of these countries, all the steel plants are basically trying to maximize their EBITDAs in terms of what they can get by postponing the capacity investments to the extent that they can. But eventually, that has to happen as a stimulus, both in North America and to a lesser degree in India, will kick in over the next few years. I think in China, although there's been talk about production cuts, right, I don't believe that is sustainable. I just don't think that you can alter the fundamentals, right, of the need for steel in the larger structure of the economy. You may be able to divert that from property, which is the right thing to do, but I do not believe that you're able to really curtail the production of steel, based on specific command control structures in basically a market kind of economy that China has developed into. So I think they tried that before also, it's going to happen. And there's also this whole thing about being able to curtail that based on CO2 emissions regulation. That is certainly one thing that you can do, but that's not going to really curtail the demand of the commodity, because that's what drives the economic growth. It may not be in property, but it's got to be in other sectors. So I think that's what's playing out. You'll see capacity deployment happening, I think, over a period of time as the EBITDA maximization kind of like takes hold
Right.
and kind of like comes out.
Certainly a space to watch. Atanu Mukherjee as well as Amit Dixit, thank you so much for taking the time, and certainly been an engaging, exciting conversation. We have to slip into a short break on this note. We have the Nifty 50 absolutely flat, unchanged, but the metal pack doing quite well, incidentally, and the entire pack is looking quite good at the moment. Be back in a very short while. On the other side, lots more. Do stay tuned.